Do you need a license to be a landlord? Welcome back to the Michael Slane channel. Today, we're going to be talking about some rental property issues. Specifically, do you need a license to be a landlord? Okay, so with that said, I want to clarify that different areas require different things. So again, you've got to check your local municipalities, and I would suggest even calling your local municipality and just ask the question, is what licenses do I need? Generally speaking, for an individual though, to manage one of their own properties, the answer is going to be no, you do not need a license. However, if you're managing a property on behalf of someone else, that can change significantly. It changes the dynamic. You really are not supposed to manage a property for someone else without having a real estate brokerage license. Here in St. Louis or in Missouri, that means not just a real estate agent license, but a real estate broker's license, which requires about 2 years of real estate experience before you can even get it. So again, to manage properties on behalf of someone else, there's definitely a higher standard required, or a higher set of standards required. And the reason for that is when you're doing it for someone else, they expect you to comply with all of the the best practices of being a landlord. For example, one of those things is security deposits. So security deposits, technically, when a tenant gives a landlord a security deposit, that money is not the landlord's money. That money should be held in an escrow account. So something totally separate from the checking account that most landlords are likely using. That money is supposed to be held so that it can be applied to damages if damages happen when the tenant has moved out. So that is a great example of why most people who manage properties for themselves, probably aren't doing that. Whereas a licensed broker is going to be required to do that. And again, they can be audited by the Board of Licensing or the Board of Real Estate. So it sets a higher standard of care when you're managing properties for someone else. Let's talk about other licenses though. So on top of just requiring a license or not, there are other licenses and things that you need to consider when you're renting out your property. And a lot of again, this is area specific as well. So here in St. Louis, all of us rental property owners are very familiar with the occupancy inspection process and the occupancy permit. Some areas may not require it. I'm thinking down in our South County areas like Jefferson County, they are not as strict. Same thing with our St. Charles County, not quite as strict. However, when you're in St. Louis County, we have a plethora of sub-municipalities. So each one of these little municipalities can set their own rules, have their own occupancy inspectors, and again, we hope, and again, they hope, I hope that they hope anyways, that they have a universal or a standard for what they're looking for in the property inspection. However, that is not always the case. So what are occupancy inspections and why did they come about and why do you need them? Occupancy inspections were designed, I believe at least, to make sure that the properties were safe. So the thought is that there's a building code and we want our new construction and all that stuff to meet the code, right? So eventually, municipalities, they have to go out and inspect and make sure that builders are complying with building code. Makes sense. Well, that is now applied to every property. So you as a landlord, if you have an older home, sometimes building codes change. And occasionally municipalities decide to update or require that you comply with newer building codes. So that means you may have to make transformations or updates to your property, and they can be costly. One of them that I completely understand, and as a landlord, it's cost us a little bit of money, but it is what it is, and thank goodness for technology. And that has to do with smoke detectors. So prior to, and again, I'm not 100% familiar, I think it was the 2010 possibly, building code, and again, there's a whole bunch of different types of manuals. But smoke detectors could be, just one-offs. Battery-operated smoke detector in one room. If it smelled smoke or fire or sensed smoke or fire, then it would start chirping, right? That's what we think of with a smoke detector. Well, the newer code requires new construction that the smoke detectors are interconnected, meaning that if the smoke detector in room 1 senses smoke, it's going to chirp, but so is the detector in room 2 or 3 or 4. So that essentially when one smoke detector goes off, they all start chirping. So that's an improvement, definitely a safety improvement in our homes. If the smoke detector in one room detects smoke, well, shoot, I want to know about it, especially if it's down in the basement and I'm up on maybe the second floor. So it's a huge safety improvement, and I get it. But as an owner of an older property, to have to then hire an electrician to interconnect the wires would be very costly. So this is why I said lucky for technology. They do make Bluetooth connected smoke detectors. When they're paired together, if one goes off, they all go off. And again, it saved us quite a bit on electricians. And again, we can get by with that now. Who knows what the next code's going to bring? But again, that's an example of the code getting more stringent and why it can be more costly, and why we run into issues. The other thing that you run into with some of these code inspection issues to get your licenses to allow people to rent out a property that you own in this area is the aesthetics. We'll call it aesthetics, right? If that individual occupancy inspector says, I don't really like the way that looks, I need you to do something about it, they can give you trouble. And we have a property that's been vacant for a very long time because of this. So it's an area, and I'm not gonna name the address or the individual, but it's an area where this person is the occupancy inspector and the mayor of this small municipality here in St. Louis. Well, he doesn't like that there are landlords. Well, guess what? It's a lower income area, and there's going to be landlords. So we do everything we normally do to properties, clean it up. And again, this was rented when we bought it. Went vacant, and we start fixing it up. We put in some new vinyl flooring, paint it, clean it up, and then we send them out to tell us what's going to need to be done. The list was about 3 pages long. The guy spent 2 or 3 hours there with our property manager, just going over what he liked and didn't like about the property. This property had window units for air conditioning, and he required us to put in central AC. Again, this is one of those things where it is it's a headache and it's a challenge that landlords run into, but it is what it is. So we're going over the top. We actually ordered new windows, new AC. We're going to mulch the front yard, or not the front yard, but just mulch it up, put some flowers in there, make it look real nice, and hopefully we'll be able to get by with this one because it's been a real challenge. So those are kind of some issues to discuss. Issues discussing licensing when it comes to renting properties. So the first one is, do you need a license when you're renting out your own property? Not really. Most likely you do not. Check with your local municipality, again, your local city, because they might have specific rules that do not apply. But generally speaking, no. If you're renting properties for someone else on someone else's behalf, most likely, yes, you are going to need a license. And to rent out the property, again, you're going to have to check with your local municipalities, find out if they require occupancy inspections and occupancy permits. And if they do, then you're going to need to obtain those as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you learned something from this video, found it entertaining. If you did, please drop a like or subscribe. Thank you so much.